The Self-Care Learning and Discovery series is back, and it's bigger and bolder than ever. This is the premier self-care event of the year, bringing together self-care enthusiasts of all backgrounds and disciplines from around the world. The World Health Organization defines self-care as the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. We also know that self-care means different things to different people. What does self-care mean to you? You'll have ample opportunity to reflect on this question during the Discovery series, with more than 20 interactive virtual sessions organized by self-care experts worldwide. The Discovery series will elevate cutting-edge research, programming, and advocacy insights across a wide variety of self-care topics, and we encourage you to attend as many sessions as possible, especially on topics that may be new to you. The Self-Care Learning and Discovery series, a core activity of the Self-Care Trailblazer Group, is organized by the White Ribbon Alliance in partnership with co-sponsor organizations and esteemed steering committee members. We also want to thank all our session organizers and presenters who have voluntarily dedicated their time to curate this event with us. We are pleased to share that every session will offer live, simultaneous interpretation in French, Spanish, and English. To access the interpretation, simply navigate to your meeting controls located at the bottom of your screen. Click on the globe icon labeled Interpretation and select the language you'd like to hear. Joining from your phone, tap on the ellipses to find the interpretation feature and then select your language. Please note, you can switch languages at any time throughout the presentation. The session is now about to begin. Don't forget, whether you're working to influence policies or programs, advance universal health coverage, or improve your own self-care, we hope that you will take the learnings from today's discussion and apply it to your own work. To that end, we invite you to continue the conversation and take action with us by becoming a member of the Self-Care Trailblazer Group. So get curious, jump in, and share your ideas and insights with us. We look forward to advancing self-care together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today. We'll have our slides up on the screen shortly, and we are really excited for you to be here for the Walking the Implementation Journey session. We're going to be doing a number of quick overview discussions today, and then we'll have some time for breakout sessions. So it'll be really exciting. Beth, why don't we go ahead and move to the next slide, please? And the next. So that's me. I'm Bonnie Keith. I'm a senior advisor for policy advocacy and learning with PATH. And as I said, I'm really happy to welcome all of you to one of the last sessions of the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series. It's been an impressive couple of weeks of learning and discussion, and we're looking forward to today's deep dive on the steps required for successful introduction and integration of self-care interventions, and some of the key resources developed and utilized by partners working to mainstream the injectable contraceptive subcutaneous DMPA, or DMPA-SC, and self-injection within national family planning programs. Next slide, please. Our session today will include rapid overviews of the critical steps toward introduction and integration, including advocacy and coordination among stakeholders, procurement planning, program design, and financing. From there, you'll have the opportunity to join small group conversations on these topics, including highlights from Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, and other countries. You'll be able to select one topic for each Knowledge Cafe session, and I'll provide more guidance on that when we get to that part of the agenda. And then finally, we'll come together for a wrap up and closing. Next slide, please. And quickly, I just wanted to provide a word on the Injectables Access Collaborative. The Access Collaborative, or the AC, is a technical assistance, coordination, and learning exchange project implemented by PATH, CHAI, InSupply, JPIGO, and JSI to advance access to DMPA-SC and self-injection, as part of an expanded range of contraceptive methods. Today's discussions will highlight the experiences of AC partners in advancing access to this self-care option. All right, next slide, please. But first, we have some trivia. So I'd love to see if you know the answer to the multiple choice question here on the slide. There are 10 total steps for successful DMPA-SC self-injection. Which of those are considered the critical steps for self-injection? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat, and we'll see who was right when we come back for the closing. I'll give you one more minute to take a quick look at what the options are here. And while I'm doing that, I'll ask Wanjiku to get ready for her presentation. And why don't we go ahead and skip forward to the next slide, please, Beth. All right, so as I mentioned, each of the 4 overview presentations is going to take about 5 minutes. To ensure we have sufficient time for the breakout conversations, please hold your questions and bring them to the Knowledge Cafe sessions. You can also put them in the Q&A box if you're not able to join the Knowledge Cafe for that particular topic, although I'm seeing maybe we don't have a Q&A box. So if you want, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Sorry about that. But yes, so if you're not able to join the Knowledge Cafe for a particular topic, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll see if we can address those in the closing or after the session today. But hopefully you can bring any questions you have to the presenters in one of the 2 Knowledge Cafe sessions. All right, so our first overview presentation is going to be with Wanjiku Menguyu from PATH. Wanjiku is a public health policy advocate working in maternal, newborn, and child health. She develops advocacy strategies, supports policy review and development, and strengthens the advocacy capacity of various institutions and public health individuals at regional, national, and subnational levels. Over to you, Wanjiku.
Great, hope you can hear me. Okay, good.
Yes,
thank you so much. If we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So sorry, if we can just go back here. So what I'll be doing is discussing issues to consider around the enabling environment. As we all know, advocates are really important. They have a real important role to play in making sure our country's policies and the support for funding for access to a broad method mix, including new options like DMPA-SC. We really need to accelerate advocacy efforts across the board. So what we're going to be doing in the few minutes that I have, I'll be introducing the advocacy pack for DMPA-SC. If you haven't already interacted with it, we're really excited to introduce it to you and to describe what's in it and how you can use it. For those who have interacted with it, during the Knowledge Cafe, this will be a really good opportunity to hear from you on how it's worked, how you've used it, an opportunity for you to share some considerations for updates. It's also available in English and French. If we can move on to the next slide. So what is the advocacy pack for DMPA? So essentially, this is an evidence-based tool that provides resources for advocates who are working on introduction and scale up and institutionalizing DMPA within national family planning programs. It is evidence-based, so it provides a sort of a product overview, WHO recommendations, and a collation of the research. It is a tool for advocates. It provides various tested advocacy strategies, as well as communication planning tools and resources. It's also a handbook for decision makers. So it provides sort of a snapshot in terms of handouts on the evidence. It describes the contraception with looking at issues around acceptability, community level distribution, and all those other factors that decision makers need to know. And very importantly, it is customizable. So it has been designed to be used and owned by advocates such as those of you here with us. And so the materials are unbranded. We want everybody to have access to them, to be able to use them in whichever format makes the most sense for their context. Next slide. So as I said, it is a resource for self-injection, and what we've learned is that from our experience is that it is a really useful tool as well for other self-care options. Essentially, in terms of what is contained in it, it provides advocacy planning tools and resources and templates. So things to think about when you're developing your advocacy strategy or looking at engagement with your decision makers and other stakeholders in country. So, for example, it helps you identify what stage is your country at, for example, with DMPASC. Are you really quite early on where you're looking at initiation, where your family planning leaders are just open to product introduction? Are you much further along in that process? It also provides some suggestions for key actions depending on the context and the evidence that you have available. It talks about the important policies that you need to consider in terms of the various policy mechanisms to advance access to DMPA, as well as many other tools and approaches. The other thing it does is it also provides communication and media planning tools. So there are materials and messaging points that you can use in your outreach efforts. When you're speaking with decision makers, when you're speaking with media, when you're talking within community groups. And then it provides some tips on how to use traditional and social media in terms of how do you effectively communicate accurately, for example, with the media, which we're sometimes hesitant to do. And it also provides a photo bank, which is really cool because then you're able to provide really accurate, clear images for your advocacy efforts, or when you're doing presentations and discussions in whatever forum. Next slide. And just to stress here from the slide, this was developed by advocates for advocates. It was initially developed in 2017 in collaboration with the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition, so working specifically with the Advocacy and Coalition Working Group. So you can see that there was a lot of inputs from advocates working across the family planning community. This was updated in 2019, and we're actually in the process of doing a further update that will be released next month, actually. So this is an opportunity for you to provide some inputs or some considerations that we need to include based off of the advocacy context. And right there, you see where you can access that full advocacy kit. It is a really useful tool. We have the DMPASC resource library, as well as the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition website. Next slide. I think that is it from me. If you want more information, please reach out to myself on there, to Bonnie. We also have the FP Options website, where we have the DMPA resource library. There's that, as well as a lot more information that you can use in your advocacy efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanjiku. Yes, and as Wanjiku noted, if you're interested in receiving a notification when the updated advocacy pack is available next month, please send us a note at fpoptions@path.org, and we'll add you to our mailing list for the announcement. And I can put that email address in the chat. All right, next slide, please. Next up, we have Dr. Adewole Adefalu, who is JSI's lead on the Injectables Access Collaborative. Wole manages work in 3 countries while also contributing to the JSI Center for Health Logistics and their activities, including self-care scale-up in Nigeria and data support. Wole links country work with global activities in supply chain information exchange and learning, country-level planning, introduction, implementation tracking, and integration with global tracking efforts. Ready for your 5 minutes, Wole, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I think it's been many years of supporting countries to introduce this product. Our experience with supply chain and procurement planning We found that our family planning programs need to take into consideration a number of issues. Maybe just lay that highlight. Next slide. Just highlighting a few of those, you'll find that one critical thing is that when introducing a new product, such as the NPSC, there's a risk of overstock, expiries, and understock. So countries need to face these challenges by ensuring that we make the right financing and procurement decisions, because when that's not done, decision makers often are wary of financing procuring products in the future. We also know that stockouts can reduce uptake, particularly for self-care, and cause customers to lose confidence in their ability to obtain this product. So it's essential in all our planning to make sure we cover all demand across a variety of commodities, not just the NPSC, as this helps us understand the flow of commodities for the whole country, particularly for self-care commodities. And in most geographies, we found that the NPSC is included as part of the routine quantification for all products, not quantified in a separate parallel exercise. So we find that a strong system needs to be built that helps to deliver these products to people where they need them. And the way this system interacts with every sector, whether private sector, or public sector, or commercial sector, needs to be considered, looking at it from the market segmentation, total market approach, and so on. Next slide. So the Access Collaborative has used a number of supply chain assessment tools. Some of these are tailored towards ensuring that we help users to define their supply chain strengthening indicators. One of those really critical ones, as you see on the screen, is the supply chain compass. The compass previews about 30 set of indicator questions and sample reports. And from that report, the compass is able to diagnose the status of the supply chain and help us to produce high-level results on supply chain evolution, maturity. And we can use that to drill down on the result of integration characteristics. So users can then download that result and use for their system strengthening. There's another one, the LIT, which collects data. I think this is more like a health facility where you need to go to look at more details. There may be need for health facility surveys. And the LIT helps to collect data on core logistic indicators from service delivery inventory records, helping to monitor performance of supply chain management. We also sometimes use, when we want to use qualitative data, we use the LSAT, which uses focus group and key informant interviews, and we're able to collect data for key components across the logistics cycle and environment. So this data can be used to identify and address system strengthening, help to identify strengths and weaknesses, and this helps to inform the annual assessment or work plans that countries or supply chain managers are going to build to improve their system performance. The NSA CA tool is used, just almost similarly, but we get key stakeholders interviewed, and these are administered at several levels within the supply chain. It helps to gather qualitative capability maturity for data across the key supply chain functional areas. And I think this kind of data is used to identify and address system strengths and weakness, just almost similar to what you have for the LSAT. You're able to use those outputs to help to strengthen your system. The beauty about this is that I think for both the LSAT and the NSCA tool, the data sources for these two tools are personnel from the health facility, maybe at the district level, or facility level, or regional level, depending on where within that system we're able to identify the problems. We're able to take some logistic information from their system record, as well as actual feedback from personnel from the health districts. Yeah, next slide. This next slide is just showing you an output of one of the assessments that was done by our team in Uganda. It's showing you the fact that these are like in-depth things that are done. There's first, you need to agree with the country on the objective for that. And within that assessment, you must come up with some key outputs that stakeholders can use to actually like try hard to troubleshoot. There's the problems, and come up with solutions that are agreed by all stakeholders, identifying the gaps, And at the end of the spectrum are recommendations, which are usually like done in such a structured way that every stakeholder knows what part they are playing in the entire system of correction. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just showing you the bouquet of other resources within the Access Collaborative pool. We have opportunity to explore issues around quantification for health commodities. We have materials that help you to understand how DMPS is introduced for your country. As a companion guide that gives you the step-by-step ways to go about this. And also we have something like a quick reference for those who want to determine how to order for DMPSC, as well as a supply chain consideration for DMPS introduction for countries that are trying to scale up. Several of these materials you can find on the gsi.com website, but we are going to be putting those on the FP options, just like my colleague Wanjiko has said. So over time, you'll be able to access this also within that, within our website of the FP options. So there's also some materials to guide you on how to do household waste disposal when introducing a product like DMPSC self-injection program in your country. So these are some of the really helpful illustrations of tools that you can access. I mean, you have a full bouquet of them. Some already exist in the FP options, but for those that I listed on this particular slide, you could always get them from the gsi.com website. And over the course of time, we're going to be also pulling that into the FP option website. I look forward to further discussion. Thanks so much. Bonnie, over to you.
Thank you, Wole. Okay, up next we have Monica Mutesa. Next slide, please, Beth. Monica is Zambia's country coordinator on the Injectables Access Collaborative, where she leads integration of DMPA and self-injection in both the public and private sectors. And Monica possesses in-depth experience in partner coordination, policy advocacy, and reproductive and maternal health, as well as great knowledge of the health sector dynamics across the African continent. Over to you, Monica. Monica, you may be on mute. We can't hear you. Did we lose Monica? Looks like I don't see her in the attendee list. Is she there? No. All right, I think we may have lost Monica. So maybe we can skip ahead to Charles and see if we can get Monica back online for her quick overview presentation. Beth, why don't you bring us up to slide 30? All right. So our well, it was supposed to be our final presentation, so now it will be our penultimate presentation, is from Mr. Charles Muhango with Banja La Mitsogolo. He is a reproductive health specialist with vast experience in sexual and reproductive health, including family planning. And in Malawi, he has championed development of guidelines for DMPASC rollout into private pharmacies as an over-the-counter drug. Charles, please go ahead and share your experiences with us around the Catalytic Opportunity Fund.
Thank you. So as already highlighted, I'm Charles Muhango, working with the Banja La Mitsogolo. Next slide, please. Just a brief background of Banja La Mitsogolo. So we are a senior member of MSI Reproductive Choices, which is a global organization available in 37 countries across the globe. Next. So the work I will be presenting to you here was conducted with support from the Catalytic Opportunity Fund, which is a flexible pool of funding that supports short-term activities to expand access to DMPA ACC across different countries. So a representative from CHAI will join us in the breakout sessions and will give more light on the details about the COF. But here I'm trying to demonstrate how, if properly used, flexible funding such as COF would also help to support the implementation of self-care. Next slide. Okay, so as BLM, working with government, we had reviewed the DMPA-ACC monitoring and evaluation and learning plan for MOH, which was developed by MOH. In this MEO plan, MOH had included provisions to scale up DMPA-ACC self-injection through training of pharmacists, so that pharmacists are also allowed to provide the service, and also to introduce DMPA-ACC in private pharmacies so that it can be available as an over-the-counter commodity so that we can expand reach. Noting that this was a stagnated activity in the MEO plan, as an organization, we engaged MOH just to see where they needed support. And from the engagement, it was agreed that the key step was to develop guidelines that would guide the implementation into the private pharmacies, but also rolling out or training of the pharmacists. So BLM, we took an initiative to apply the Catalytic Opportunity Fund, the COF, to support the development of the guidelines so as to enable the ministry to scale up self-injection into the private pharmacies. Next slide. Okay, so the process was basically led by MOH. Mind you, this is something we are only supporting the MOH. It was MOH responsibility and also MOH's plan. So we were helping MOH to put the plan into action, and they led the process. A task force was formulated. Already existed, of course. So this issue was put across to the task force, and BLM provided the logistical support through the COF funding, and also some of the technical support. So several activities were involved, including meetings. We also had meetings within the task force. We had meetings with regulatory authorities. We know these are very key people, bodies in terms of implementation of healthcare services. So we had to engage all the regulatory authorities, the nursing body, the clinical medical body. We also engaged the pharmacy body, and we also had some engagement with the Safe Motherhood Technical Working Group. And finally, the developed document had to get approval from the senior management of the MOH. In the package, the core funding included pilot trainings for pharmacists in a few districts just to see out the rollout of the guidelines. Next slide. So there were some lessons that were learned through the process. It is very clear that COF's flexibility, it was helpful enough because of some bureaucratic challenges within the government system, and also some of the regulatory authorities. We had experienced a delay in the process until to a point that the grant period had come to an end. So we had to seek two no-cost extensions, which were granted. However, we still had one key area of supporting the supply management, which still was not achieved until we also completed the two NCEs. But we also learned that involving regulatory bodies in the initial stages helped to have the authorities clear understand the need and be on board. You know, regulatory authorities hold certain powers. So pharmacists, by nature of their profession, at least within the Malawian context, are not allowed to provide the services like injectables. So to have them do that, we needed support from the medical council to allow them to provide such a clinical service, also to have authorization from the Pharmacy and Poisons Regulatory Authority, which also controls or regulates the practice of the pharmacies. And this was granted, but the key was involving them from the beginning. One activity that was very important, but we missed in the grant application, was the dissemination of guidelines to district level authorities. This impacted the implementation of the private pharmacies. This is because the guidelines guided that the private pharmacies needed to get authorization from the district authorities. However, they were less involved during the development process, not necessarily less involved, but the actual authorities were not actively involved because we worked with the the FP coordinators, but the actual top
One
management.
more minute, Charles. Sorry to interrupt you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So anyway, lastly, just to point out that the involvement of partners in the whole process was also important, because this one of the gap that we identified of not reaching out to the district authorities was taken up by another partner, Chai Malawi, who supported that gap that we had in the initial grant. So this is the importance of also involving other partners. And finally, as a takeaway home, we believe flexible funding opportunities like COF can really help to support governments scale up the DMPA-SC self-care. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you for stepping in a little early. We appreciate that. And so as Margaret mentioned in the chat, thank you, Margaret. And we also heard from Monica. Unfortunately, the power has gone off where she is. So she is currently booted off the call. Hopefully she can join us at some point over the next hour. But in the meantime, our colleague, Julie Heinsohn from PATH, who is a program officer based in the US, has generously agreed to step in and share Monica's slides. And she will also help co-facilitate the Knowledge Cafe breakout session with George Barige from our Uganda team. So we'll still have a great discussion on the DMPA-SC self-injection program design activity and the program design guide resource. So over to you, Julie. Thank you again.
Thanks, Bonnie. And hello, everyone. As Bonnie said, my name is Julie Heinsohn, and I have had the pleasure of working with Monica on the Access Collaborative, supporting Scale Up in Zambia over the past few years. Could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So a quick overview of the history of DMPA-SC and self-injection introduction in Zambia. Provider administration and self-injection has been rolled out in the public sector nationwide. And as of October 2020, private pharmacy provision of DMPA-SC and self-injection initiation has been allowed. Scale Up is underway in the pharmacy sector with about 19% of private pharmacies nationwide currently offering SI services. Community-based distributors are recently permitted to provide DMPA, IM, SC, and initiate clients on self-injection. Rollout of that new development has not yet started. So currently CBDs are creating demand for self-injection until that rollout begins. And, oh, well, yeah, I just covered those 2 points. Sorry, next slide, please. Some lessons that we've learned from Zambia's self-injection rollout have been that a well-implemented self-injection rollout can form the bedrock of self-care guideline development and implementation and can be used as a strong reference point for self-care. Zambia opted for a comprehensive in-community approach. However, context will determine what is best. It's important to allow a homegrown solution as to which Ministry of Health department will take the lead. Initially, family planning was in the lead, but later, as we've moved into discussions of community-based distribution and self-care more broadly, the community department has taken over. The COVID pandemic highlighted the importance of self-care and particularly self-injection in reproductive health. This has resulted in the ministry demanding guidelines to address self-care for Zambia. Next slide, please. So I am not going to cover everything on this slide. I'll just give you a very brief overview. We've told you a little bit about the Injectables Access Collaborative already, but just to highlight, the 3 tiers of technical assistance that we provide. Continuous TA is provided in 11 countries, including Zambia, to intensively scale up DMPA SC and self-injection. Short-term TA is available to any country on demand, free of charge, and can help support earlier in the process, introduction planning, scale-up planning on a variety of topics that are related to self-injection scale-up and self-care more broadly, as those lessons are transferable. And then, as we've mentioned a few times, the DMPA SC Resource Library, fpoptions.org, has quite a number of resources that are available to anyone as our self-serve technical assistance. Next slide, please. So the recommendations for contraceptive self-injection program design guide is a comprehensive tool that outlines optimal program models for DMPA SC through self-injection as part of an expanded range of contraceptive methods delivered through informed choice programming. It walks through each step of a self-injection program, including all components related to health workers and clients. It highlights essential evidence on self-injection program design, establishes areas where more research is needed, draws attention to key moments for program design decision-making, and links users to additional resources and tools for program development. So in the case of Zambia, some of the specific aspects of the program design guide that were used were plotting out the client journey using the journey map, which is a program design guide tool, and is also the basis for how a lot of the program design guide is organized, where we thought through each step in a client's visit to a health center to decide to self-inject, to help the Ministry of Health think through each aspect of the program that would need to have clear guidance and clear definitions for the program to operate. Next slide, please. So what you're seeing here is an overview of a brief that the Access Collaborative has developed that has accumulated key findings, insights, and recommendations for implementing self-injection at scale. This was developed a little bit after Zambia had designed their self-injection program using the program design guide, but we did want to highlight it because the 5 recommended practices that are reflected here are 5 priorities that the Ministry of Health in Zambia is pursuing as they roll out the self-injection program more broadly. Next slide, please. Here, I will just note, these are some of those additional resources that are available on fpoptions.org. Again, this is part of our self-service technical assistance that's available, and much of this is applicable more broadly to other self-care innovations. So I won't read through these. I'll just leave these up for a moment so everyone can take a look at them. But with that, I will hand it back over to Bonnie.
Thank you, Julie. Special thanks, because we know you were not necessarily expecting to do that today. So I greatly appreciate it, as does everyone else listening on the call. And for those of you listening, I did not get to say that Julie is actually one of the critical developers of the program design guide. She is definitely an expert in this particular resource, as well as having had the pleasure of working closely with Monica on our activities in Zambia. All right, so thank you, Beth, for bringing us up to our breakout session slides here. And so now we're ready to move into these breakout discussions. So in a few minutes, everyone's going to be able to select one of the 4 breakout sessions that are noted on the slide here and which align to the previous presentations. So please note that each session will have one breakout room with French and Spanish interpretation, which you can see highlighted in yellow. So for the first breakout session, that is going to be for the discussion on the Catalytic Opportunity Fund with Charles, and that's in the plenary room. And then in the second breakout session, the translation will be available for the discussion on program design with Julie and George, and hopefully Monica, if she's able to join us again. And finally, please note that the breakout sessions will have a Mentimeter component, and a code will be provided in the breakout session room. And so you can use your laptop or your mobile phone to access the Mentimeter and answer one question. So I hope everyone has good discussions in your group, and we'll have 15 minutes for that. And then I will see you back here.
Okay, hi everyone. So this is the flexible funding breakout room. You have seen the presentation. Basically, we are looking at the COP, which is a Catalytic Opportunity Fund, a flexible pool of funding from CHAI. I don't know, do you have any questions from the overview? Maybe before we go there, do we think this is a helpful resource or would be helpful in your country, in your different countries, or in the work you do? You can respond in the chat, or you can just explain a bit if you feel you have to speak up.
Yes, feel free to come off mute.
Hi, Charles. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Neka.
Hi. Just to correct that the Catalytic Opportunity Fund for the DMPASC is funded by 2 donors, and Chai is the administrator of that fund. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, okay.
Thanks for the correction. Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone, do we think it's a helpful resource that would help us in our respective work? Okay, feel free to respond in the chat, but also from the overview that I shared on the topic, do you have any questions or somewhere specific you would like me to clarify or highlight? As I say, feel free to ask more details for the catalytic funding, as we have also a partner from Chai who will be able to explain more details of the co-funding. Anyone, or do you have any resource similar to the catalytic funding that has helped your countries or in your work to scale up self-injection? Could be DMPA, ACC, or another self-care work?
Thank you, Charles. I guess you had also mentioned some of the challenges that the team experienced with like implementing and the need for like the 2 NCEs, but I don't know if there were like other challenges that you also experienced that you could share with the house as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. You know, also working with the MOH or working with government, I think the system is too slow, which I think it's common in most of the countries that I've seen. So the other challenge was this is something that we were just helping the ministry to implement, something that they had already included in their plans, but still there was also they needed some pushing. So I think it's just a general problem of sometimes working with the public system, but the key challenges that we faced were the ones that I mentioned, to maneuver through the bureaucratic lanes the way we had anticipated in terms of guideline or policy development. There were still some challenges where you reach at a certain stage and someone says, no, you cannot reach, you cannot be here before you reach or you pass through this channel. So those were the key challenges that led to the delays that we had to request for NCEs. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. But also maybe just to add, getting the regulatory authorities also to clearly accept. I think the key was involving them from the beginning, because at a certain point it was clear that it was a push from one regulatory authority to the other. So the Pharmacy Medicines and Medicines Regulatory Authority says, we do not control clinical practice.
Yeah.
The authorization should come from Medical Council of Malawi. You go to Medical Council says, no, we don't, we are okay, but we do not control pharmacies. So you need to get authorization from the Pharmacy Regulatory Authority, not from us. So that push was also one of the contributing factors to delay, to have them fully take the responsibility. all of them, when we are together in the meeting, would accept the need and agree on the need to have this implemented, but none wanted to take the responsibility of giving the go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so do you think what other partners maybe like in your different setup do you think could be key in promoting self-care? Like in the case of Malawi, we have MOH leading this, and they are doing a very good job with the support from the existing family planning partners. I don't know the setup in different countries, and what do you think? Do you think there's any other maybe partners that could be key to also support this implementation of such activities in terms of promotion of self-care? Colleagues, feel free to comment on anything that you feel, or you have any questions from the specific areas that I had presented. This is also an opportunity to clearly understand the catalytic fund, which is mostly comes out every year and at several intervals. So I think this is an opportunity to get more information. If you have questions, Mega is here also to support.
Hi, Charles. I just wanted to make sure you saw the question in the chat from Betty. She asked, can you talk more about the process of getting authorization for pharmacists to provide the service, the challenges and wins, and how long did it take from the initial engagement to getting the authorization?
Okay, so I think I might have answered when I was responding to the other question, but just to give a brief overview, basically what you need to get organized first, because still the regulatory authorities will not just accept something new because we have said it. So you need to get organized. That's where now, in our case, we had the task force, which led the process with the directions from the Reproductive Health Directorate under the Ministry of Health. And now right from the word go, we started incorporating the regulatory authorities in all our discussions or meetings related to development of this guideline. So from there, they were even the ones that were representing were the ones better guiding to say, no, if you want this to pass, this is the channel you should take for it to get easily considered when it goes to the board, the board from the regulator or from the registrar. So this is the channel. So the ones that really participated in the first meetings gave us the very good directions before we actually presented the case now to the regulatory bodies. So we involved them in our routine task force discussions. Then we had to now bring in them as authorities now, all the three major authorities in Malawi, bring them together with an emphasis to have at least a presentation in that meeting from the top executive members and at least a technical person so that they are able to also support. So preferably those that had been already attending the meetings. So that is one way that made it easier. But the other challenge is the one that I said that yes, they understood the process, they understood the need, but now no one wanted to take responsibility in authorizing that we can go ahead and implement in pharmacies. There was a bit of a pushback, but with regular interactions with them, it became something that was achievable, and really the guidelines were passed. They are now in action. So there is also a question, okay, Beth is questioning if NECA could also share a little more about the COF application process. So NECA, maybe if you could come in just to highlight quickly the brief process of the COF application.
Yes, and thank you very much for that question. So the COF application process, we're currently, before it used to be on a rolling basis where applications could come in at any time and they'll be reviewed and accessed by peer reviewers before a decision is taken. But now, due to the limited funding that we have on the COF, we had moved from the rolling process to having them being implemented in Circle. And the application is currently in its third cycle. We had received applications from different organizations across different countries. And the application now goes through like an 8-week cycle where in the first week, the applications come in and they're reviewed to check, eligibility check is conducted to see that all the activities that are planned are in line with like the country's plan. And then subsequently, those applications are sent out to peer reviewers who review them using a scoring rubric and send them back to us for consolidation. We typically reach out to 2 to 3 reviewers per application to make sure we get as an impartial final score as much as possible. And so following that, we consolidate that feedback and send it back to the applicants and request that they respond to the questions that were sent in by the peer reviewers. And at the end of that process, we have like an impact score that we use to evaluate the applications, to identify applications that would be recommended for funding. The process is actually quite very competitive since the funds are limited, but we try to ensure that the peer reviewers scores are used as well as the impact scores to identify the organizations to recommend to the donor for funding. And so once we have those organizations, we have those applications, we develop opportunity slides that we send out to the donor, and then we get feedback from them on those opportunities and then can reach out to the applicants to provide feedback to them on whether their applications were approved or whether they were denied or whether they will be rolled over to the next cycle based on the strengths of their application. That's just in a nutshell about it, but you would see details about it in the overview slides that were shared.
Hi, Nanika. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We've all come back and I think are trickling back into the plenary here. So I know we were hearing the tail end of your conversation, and I hope that you all were having a great discussion. We were just getting into an interesting topic on the advocacy pack and advocacy resources when you're facing some hard discussions or where there's more conservative takes on self-care, self-injection, etc. And just to note for Abraham, that is content on that is available in the advocacy pack. So there's a lot of information in there about messaging, framing your messages, and then also a Q&A to address myths and misperceptions. So yes, please go ahead and access that resource. All right. So I hope people were able to have good discussions and access the Mentimeter. Thanks for putting that up there. You can see the code on the screen, and that will be the same for the next session. So continue to add anything in there that you are going to do as far as next steps are concerned. So I think we can move on to our next session. So we have sufficient time for both discussion there and then also coming back together at the end. And please note that the translation component for this session will be on the program design topic. And so you can stay here in the plenary room for that. And so Julie and George, you all will just stay here, not move anywhere. And hopefully everyone will be able to get into the room with you with ease. All right, I think we can go ahead and move into the next session.
Okay, I'm just going to give it a moment to finish sorting everyone, and then we can jump in. Okay, excellent. I will jump in then. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Program Design Guide breakout session. I'm going to be joined by my colleague, George Barige. George, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you, Julie. I'm George Barige, and I work as the regional technical advisor for Anglophone countries on the same project with Julie, where we are supporting Czech counties to be able to introduce and scale up the DMPSC. And we are picking up the aspect of the short-term technical assistance.
Fantastic. Thanks, George. So based on lessons learned from our last breakout, I am going to start by sharing with you a quick look at what the Program Design Guide actually looks like. This is our website, fpoptions.org, and you can reach the Program Design Guide directly by going to fpoptions.org/PDG. It will bring you here, where you can find the recommendations for contraceptive self-injection brief and the Program Design Guide itself, available in English and in French. So here is what our guide looks like. It's a very large PDF with a very handy table of contents to help you navigate to what you're looking for quickly, if you have something specific that you're looking for. The way that the guide is structured is to help you think through the initial program design considerations of your program. So that would be thinking through the channels where you want to offer self-injection, which cadres of health workers, how will you train those health workers, some general supply considerations that need to be thought through to ensure that you have the supply to offer self-injection to clients. And then it moves into the health worker and client journeys. So this is what I mentioned was something that was very helpful in Zambia's case, and thinking through all of the aspects that need to be considered when designing a self-injection program. I'll get to that, but don't want to make anyone dizzy if I scroll too quickly. So as we move through here, you'll see recommended practices are highlighted. They cover evidence in support of those practices. They'll give you overviews of where those recommended practices are happening. For example, this is talking about considering expanding self-injection availability through pharmacies and drug shops. And then we'll link to you additional resources and tools that are available on fpoptions.org to help you, put together a more comprehensive plan for what's needed. So here is where we start looking at the health worker and client journeys. This is the journey map that we talk about, or that I spoke about. And then just to note that we do have an actual tool that you can use on this page. This is what we used in the case of Zambia. It lays out, the key things that you need to think of for each aspect of a woman's journey through deciding to self-inject, be trained on self-injection, and then taking units home. For example, under waste disposal here, it's helping you think through how she'll dispose of her units. So will she be provided with a container? Will she be given guidance on the appropriate type of container to contain a used unit to keep it away from children, animals, other people? Once this used device is securely stashed, when she's ready to dispose of it, where does that happen? Will she return it to the closest community health worker? Will she take it back to the health facility in a year when she returns for resupply? Is there another option that we're going to advise to this woman? And you can select what's going to happen for your program and then fill in any notes or additions. When you go through each section, it's going to give you an overview of what it is that we're talking about in that section, and then what's essential. What are the definite things that you need to have happen to ensure a quality program? What's flexible? That's going to be the different ways of getting to that. And then what not to do, which are the pitfalls to be avoided when thinking through these programs. So as I said, this goes through health worker training, client training, first injection, and client competency, waste disposal at home, storage at home, coming back for resupply, the whole journey of a client and her self-injection journey. So I want to leave space for questions and discussion. I'm going to stop here, but just so you know, I can put the link to this in the chat. You can browse it at your leisure, and we can jump into a little bit more of a discussion. So maybe we can start with if there are any volunteers in the group that have used this tool in the past. Could you tell us? You can either come off mute or you can add it in the chat where you are if you've used this tool, or if you haven't used it yet, but you think it would be useful to you in your work or in your country. Could you raise a hand, give a thumbs up, say yes in the chat? Okay, not getting a lot of responses on that. So maybe we can start with the bigger question. Do you have any questions or any specifications? Oh, here we go. Here's a great question from Betty. What was your approach in mapping the client journey? Did you use a human-centered design approach? That's a fantastic question, and one I don't actually know the answer to. So I might ask George if you know.
I can
Yes.
come on, Julie. This
Oh,
is
great.
Fiona.
Thank you, Fiona. The design of the client journey map is slightly ahead of my timeline.
It's
Fiona.
okay, yes. In Uganda, we use the human-centered design approach, whereby we invited the women and also the providers and also the policymakers, and we got their insights. That's how we came up with our journey maps. For instance, you will see it was peculiar to learn from the women that they said they didn't want us to reach out to them, but they would reach out to us. So to answer your question, yes, we use the HCD. George, you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say that we first sort of framed something that we thought would be able to work based on what we already knew, and had just to go and get feedback from from all parties, from the policymakers, from the implementers, the service providers, then also from the clients themselves and the young people, by the way. So we got actually some very good feedback, which enabled us actually to be able to fine-tune these designs. So it's highly recommended actually to have that feedback.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? I'd love for this to be a discussion. Maybe we could hear if anyone wants to contribute in terms of, bringing a self-injection program together, designing a self-injection program or other self-care program. Is anyone willing to share any successful strategies that have worked in your country for either designing a program, coming up with those key pieces of guideline that need to be in place, or any real challenges that you're facing? Are there any roadblocks that are stopping you from being able to design or implement a self-injection program in your country? Okay, I see another question in the chat from Betty. Did you find more similarities or differences in the client journey across different markets? George, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure.
Great, thanks.
Definitely there are similarities and I can say minor differences. For example, you look at maybe like the dispensing protocol, like for example, how many, for example, units to give. So you'll find that maybe some countries would say, we are going to give, let's say, three units to take home. Some others would say, we shall have just only 2 to take home. So those are just like some bit of differences. However, if you look at the whole journey map, you realize that actually the arrangement is almost like similar, starting from the time the person, the client comes in, up to the time when you have actually to continue to support the woman after he has actually left the facility. So they are just like sort of minor issues, but overall, almost like the whole process is actually similar. We have not seen like quite so different, processes just in the different countries. I think there is another term contribution here. Was it for more?
Yep, so we have one question. What role did traditional and religious leaders play in designing the program? In countries like Nigeria, they play a key role having concerns around religious and ethnic issues in dealing with programs.
Yes, in
So-
Uganda, this is Fiona Walgembe from Uganda. Like I said, we invited those three categories of the segments of the population. We invited them and they gave their response. And because usually we started like with giving the benefits of family planning. Of course, you'll find that the Catholics, with due respect, will say, "Oh, believe in natural family planning." But what we know is we do give them all the information. At the end of the day, it is the client who decides. You respect that and inform them, and they also get to know that this is a personal choice. So they were critical and would use those aspects in the Bible, for instance, and the Quran about family planning, because it's very similar to what we do in the general family planning services, giving information. We talk about all the benefits. And then at the end of the day, we say it is the client to decide, but yes, they did participate in this. Thank you. Over.
That's great. Thank you, Fiona. And similar topic, there's a question, have you been able to involve adolescents in the client journey or other parts of the program design? Can you speak a
For
little
the
bit to the
people-
adolescents in Uganda?
Yeah, in Uganda, when you usually use the term adolescents, it's very, very tricky. This has been on for a while, despite the fact that we have a consistent high teenage pregnancy of 25%. It's really very sad. Even the recent Uganda Demographic and Health Survey, we have the same statistics. But politically, there's still a belief that we should not talk about this. So in Uganda, we say from 18 years. That's the age we use. We usually refer to them as young people. So that's the group that we really used in the journey maps. But for the team, for the people to know here that in Uganda, we are permitted to give services to the young people who come. I mean, when they're pregnant, they're entitled to that. But for those below 18, ideally, they are not allowed to get contraceptives. But the policy is that once they've already gotten pregnant, then they're entitled to get that. It's still a challenge in Uganda. Thank you. Over.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Fiona. We have all
Bonnie.
come back to plenary. So it sounds like you were having an interesting conversation on adolescents' access to contraception and self-injection in Uganda and elsewhere in the program design discussion. So I'm glad that hopefully that went well. I think most of the participants stayed in the plenary room and talked with the program design group. So Beth just put in the chat the Mentimeter, and we're going to take a look at that in just a minute. But before we go over there, we do have about 12 minutes until we wrap up the session today. And so I did want to see if anybody from any of the breakout rooms wanted to share, whether that's one of the facilitators or a participant, wanted to share a key takeaway or anything from your discussions that you thought were really interesting to share with the full group today. Might call on a few names. Wole, was there anything really helpful in the supply chain discussions? Or supply resource discussions, I should say.
Yes, pretty interesting conversation. I think we had two people in the room who had used two of those tools in Nigeria and Uganda. And we had that talk about how useful the tool was to them, what kind of stakeholders were involved in that assessment, and were there specific challenges that leapt out to them as they were using those tools. So it was a quite interesting conversation before we were pulled back into plenary, and we went back again with a little smaller group to discuss some of the opportunities or challenges that we have with introducing DMP-SC. And I think we had that feedback, interestingly, also from Nigeria and Uganda. on some of their experiences around creating demand. While in Uganda, that work that was done around the supply chain and the feedback and next recommendations that came out of it, how helpful it was for their supply chain strengthening. I think one critical thing we discussed was that need for countries who are introducing new products, and particularly because self-care is new, there's that need for us to continue to balance out the demand with supplies. And at every point, we have to be sure that we have evidence driving that process. Where we have challenges, is a good place to call for help. And I typed in the chat box a couple of minutes before we went into those breakout rooms that the Injectable Access Collaborative has many of options of technical assistance that we offer to countries that are in different stages of this introduction. Might be specific to just the NPSC, but some of these tools are applicable for even much broader use across health commodities.
Thank you, Wole. That's great. And yeah, Beth just dropped into the chat the more information on technical assistance options from the Access Collaborative. So please do take a look at that if that's something you might be interested in. Charles and Nneka, I'm curious in your breakout session, if there was, what people were thinking about your experience in Malawi, but also the Catalytic Opportunity Fund or COF in general. Feel free to come off mute and tell us about some of your conversation.
All right, thanks, Beth. Basically, I think the interest was most were interested in understanding how the COF application process is, and maybe what could be the key hints that could help them successfully get the opportunity to get funding from COF. An interesting case from Abraham from South Sudan, if I'm correct, where now they're recovering from war, so scaling up the DMPACC self-injection would be one of the methods that would really benefit the communities. The government is doing their part, but also he believes the partners are also doing their part. But such kind of funding would really help them to reach out to more women with the self-injection. Also interesting in Bolivia, where I think, Bolivia, if I didn't miss, the country where they do not have access to DMPACC. So that's also a major challenge coming from people like us who know the benefits of DMPACC, and there are still other countries that would love to have an opportunity, but they do not have yet the commodity. But the need is there. From the colleague who we were talking to, they are also providing abortion services, but now supporting post-abortal family planning becomes a challenge, especially in the communities, because they have community volunteers who are trained to support PAC services in the community using medical methods, but now they don't have these easy-to-use FP access methodologies that could support more women. So it would also be a very good plus to them. Of course, like enough UNFPA is there currently doing a certain study to look also into this area. Hope something positive will come out from there. But there was also a general interest in understanding what were the challenges, key challenges, or other challenges that were not mentioned that may be hindered or dragged the scaling up of DMPACC self-injection into those other channels other than the normal medical or clinical channels that we know. So those were the key areas that we shared in the discussion.
That's great. And it sounds like there were some similar conversations happening in the programming discussion as well. So in the interest of time, I will ask Julie and Wanjiku if there's any highlights you guys want to share, to go ahead and drop those in the chat. And then ask Beth if she can share the Mentimeter results. And okay, so we've got a few responses here. And just again, this is next steps for action, and about including resources in trainings, cascading learnings from the discussion today, and the resources to your team. Thank you. Please do so. We want to make sure these resources are well known by the community that would benefit from them. Solutions for data collection in the private sector, looking through the tools to adapt them to your context and continue conversations on commodity security for self-injection. Yes, a big topic. Creating awareness about the Catalytic Opportunity Fund and encouraging applicants to apply. That would be great. And following up with the Access Collaborative for help with self-injection directives. Please do, please reach out. Okay, so feel free to continue adding content to the Mentimeter. I see another one coming in right here about increasing advocacy with different stakeholders. Yes, fantastic. And including adolescent girls. Excellent. All right, Beth, why don't you take us back to the slide deck so we can share the very important answer to our trivia question. Okay, everyone. So I know some of you were guessing in the chat at the beginning of our session today, and I saw quite a few of you had selected option C. That is the correct answer. So the critical steps for self-injection are in the box at the right, and they are first to mix the solution, then second, activate the device, followed by pinching the skin and inserting the needle, and then finally slowly pressing the reservoir. These 4 steps can be remembered as NAPs. So raise your hand if you got it right, and you can do that by clicking the reactions icon at the bottom of the screen. Just love to see how many people got it correct. All right, I think we are pretty well wrapped up today. If there's any final words, feel free to jump in. But I will go ahead and just take moderator's prerogative to close us out. So again, we've mentioned this a few times, but please do reach out to the AC team if you have outstanding questions, or if you're interested in exploring additional resources on self-care and self-injection, as well as potential technical assistance from the Access Collaborative project. And one note that I'd like everyone to remember is just that while the resources discussed today were largely created to facilitate advancement of self-injection, many of them can be adapted to other self-care initiatives, and the AC is happy to discuss those pathways with you. So final thank you to all of our panelists today, Wanjiku, Wole, Charles, Julie. Also thanks to Kim and Molly at White Ribbon Alliance for convening the Self-Care Learning and Discovery series, the tech support, and for welcoming this particular session to the series. And finally, thank you to our behind the scenes Access Collaborative colleagues for operational support, especially to Beth for organizing this fantastic session. So I think that is everything I wanted to make sure that I got in. Taking a quick look at the chat here. Julie noted that the program group took a closer look at the program design guide itself and discussed the design of the client journey, including inputs from clients, health workers, and faith leaders. That's great. And then George and Fiona shared some specifics about the program in Uganda. And Wanjiku is noting that the updated advocacy pack does include a number of recently published research findings and implications for policy and programming, and provides guidance on approaches and opportunities for introduction, scale up, and implementation. All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, we really appreciate your time. We appreciate those of you who stuck around, who joined the different breakout rooms, and we hope this was a really helpful session for you. Cheers.